So, lovies, this week we're going to build a bit on our last pillar that we talked about last week on trusting yourself. So many parents that come to me ask me about how do they support healthy self-esteem in their children. Now, this is such a valid question because I think many of us, I know I was one of those many, felt quite insecure in my parenting or how I was showing up in the world. So my self-esteem, it looked good on the outside because I was trying to be in that permission seat, in the power seat, but I was quite insecure on the inside. So it was more of a compensation, trying to be something that I was not more than actually coming from deep wisdom and trust inside. Now, I really explored this deeply for myself. I really felt strong about creating an environment where my daughter could know herself. So, from everything that I could tell from my own experience and everything that I had grown up in, I could see how important it was for her to have self esteem versus other esteem. I was raised in a culture where other esteem was really important because if I didn't get the other esteem, I would usually get in trouble or I'd be outed or I didn't fit in. So I learned very early how to read others' energy. And when they had a smile on their face, I would act in those ways. And when they had a growl on their face or a scowl, I would begin to repress parts of my being, even though I may have been ready or I may have wanted to do something. So I was referring my esteem outside. I was giving it to the outside. And that, went on most of my life. And in my parenting, that showed up in wanting others to look at me as a good parent, looking to others to see, especially when we go like to the park and if my daughter would start acting different ways, she was a hitter, so she would get upset and she would hit kids. I wouldn't have the self-esteem to recognize that my daughter needed me. I would often throw my daughter under the bus and look to others to see if I could get the esteem of others. So my parenting really was managed in a way, or it was I saw it in others. That's how I was parenting. Now, this didn't really work for me and my daughter because she wasn't willing to behave in the ways that I needed her to behave so I could get that other esteem. So I really began to question my own capacities to actually be with myself and to trust myself. And the deeper I went, I recognized my daughter was not misbehaving. She was communicating to me what she needed, and I wasn't listening. I felt that I was in the seat of giving her permission to be who she was. I wasn't actually so curious about supporting her. Now, this was quite shocking. So if you're listening to this might be shocking to you because you may feel like you're giving your kids all these opportunities and you're taking them to dance class and you're, giving them the best schools and all this. And yes, you may, I was. And yet I wasn't really listening to my daughter. I had a projection onto her of what I wanted her to have, which was about my esteem, and it was external. So when she behaved well or she did good, my self-esteem rose. When she did things that I perceived as negative or didn't want to do the things that I wanted her to do, it felt like I was deflated. So everything was really dependent on her behavior. And I was so clear I didn't want my daughter to grow up that way. Now, what that required was really this healthy separation, which we'll talk more about in the coming podcasts, but we just mentioned it a little bit last week, where I could separate out and then ask my daughter really good questions about herself. Who was she? What was she ready for? What did she want to do? And many times that went against what I thought she was ready for. An example was she did not like to talk to people in the stores. She would not go up and order food for the longest time. And I kept thinking she needed to learn that. She needed to be more self-reliant and independent. The truth was is that she just wasn't ready. Now, my daughter's 21 now. She's been to Europe 3 times. She lived in Japan for a year, a gap year. So she fully has the capacity to take care of herself and, order things at stores and places. But when she was younger, her timing was very different. She was a little more reticent. She needed more time and space to grow into that capacity. And when I judged that and saw that as in a, insecure in some way, instead of going, oh, she's not ready, then I would want to push her. But when I would come alongside her and ask her questions about it, she was very, very clear that it was a lot for her. It was too much at the time, at the age that she was, and she still needed my support. She still needed me to do that for her. So when I relaxed and began to ask her beautiful questions so she could reflect back to me and let me know where she was and where her readiness was, so much began to shift and change. And I relaxed, and my self esteem grew in trusting that wisdom that I could not be in the permission seat, I could be in the support seat. And therefore, her self esteem keeps growing as she gets to know who she is, not who I want her to be. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parenting Paused. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor and share it with your mama friends. You can also leave a review wherever you listen, which will support getting the Pure Joy message out. Come on over to the Pure Joy Parenting Practice Facebook page or join me on Instagram to hear more. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Safe Seat course on the Pure Joy website. And while there, check out the offerings page to go deeper in the Pure Joy work.